Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Finance Committee meeting, April 2025, to talk about our next fiscal year budget. To chair the meeting this morning is our Finance Committee Chair, Mr. George Ward.
Thanks, Fred. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Call the meeting to order, and we have business to do. We have a quorum, so we need to approve the minutes from the April 15th, 2024 meeting and the September 25th, 2024 meeting.
Motion to approve?
And I will second, and all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about the fiscal year 2026 operating budget, and I will turn it over to
All right, thank you so much.
Fred.
So one quick announcement before we start. First, our mission statement: we serve people in our community with mobility solutions. Congratulations to Michael Burnett, our rodeo champion, 4th place in the International Bus Rodeo this week. We'll send this out to the entire board this afternoon with the packet as a result of this meeting, but I wanted to share this. We are so proud of him, and it honestly doesn't surprise me that he did so well. He is a phenomenal driver. Randolph, Jason, and Isaiah were there with him. Wonderful event. We couldn't be more proud of him.
How many people get to the Nationals?
It was, I think, 75 folks, and he was a few seconds away from being 3rd place.
Yeah.
Walking on the stage, getting an award.
Well, good for him. Because he's gone a lot of years.
Yes.
So that's the best he's ever done.
This is the best he's ever done. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great.
So next year, we might be number 1. Okay, so highlights from last year. Our transit center renovation, we've officially kicked those off. This is our 2nd day of operation on High Street.
How do you think that's going, by the way?
It's going well. There's some small tweaks we need to make that we will make moving forward. But we've been down there yesterday. I've not been down there today yet.
I was.
How did it look? Was it?
It was good.
It was good.
I mean, I hit right when all the buses were getting there,
Uh-huh.
and they all seemed to know where they were going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the people know where they're going.
It's an
passengers.
education,
Yeah.
so we have extra staff down there trying to direct traffic. We reconfigured the lanes for bus only.
Yeah.
Some small things that we still need to tweak, but I think we've been really pleased so far. It's going to be a long summer,
Yeah.
and we keep trying to communicate that, hey, just hang in there, because when we get done, it's going to be worth it.
Has it done anything to the traffic? Just having all those buses right there?
I've not heard the complaints yet. I expect they will come at some point.
It slows it, but it's not going that fast to begin with.
And it's down High Street and the viaduct?
We do have 3 buses that are
I saw that.
on MLK
Yeah.
every cycle, so that helps kind of manage everything too.
It's more buses than people are used to seeing on High Street.
Yeah.
That's the only difference.
It's going to be a little bit of a shock, I think, when people see it. Also this year, we have a new collective bargaining agreement. That is a 3-year agreement that included improvements to wages and procedures, including like grievance procedures. We think that has strengthened our workforce. We have the microtransit and the strategic planning efforts. So both of those are underway. The microtransit feasibility study was likely to conclude this fiscal year. We are aiming maybe a May update for the board of directors. The strategic plan is scheduled to go a little later into this year and will likely be done before this calendar year is over. This year we made some service improvements for on-time performance. Those schedule adjustments, I think we did, helped our reliability, helped our on-time performance, and especially during those peak periods. We do have some more of those coming up this next year that we'll talk about as we move forward. We made some big strides in our capital projects, including the CNG fueling station. That project is complete, and our maintenance CNG safety improvements is underway, should be done within the next couple of months. The technology upgrades that we've made include Avail and TSI. That is the Avail systems are onboard CAD ABL system. Also some of our back-end business technology that helps maintenance and finance talk to each other and really streamlines our internal operations. We have some customer-facing technology that's included in the Avail package, and TSI is our onboard security systems. Hiring and retention, I cannot believe how far we've come in hiring and retention. This time last year, I would never have guessed that we're starting to sort of change from, hey, let's catch up with the number of operators that we have, to we're in a place of maintenance. I think this fiscal year, our training staff has converted about 38 operators that are still in revenue service now. We have a training class ongoing at the moment and another one starting. After that, I think we're in a moment that we need to maintain, retain, and the hiring, the labor issue is not near as urgent as it was.
Are you hearing that in other, because I know it's now the great stay, people aren't leaving and aren't changing jobs just because of the uncertainty in the market?
Mhm.
Is that anything to do with us, or that's just the market right now?
I've not heard, I've heard one other agency say that they're closing into the same place that we are. They're a much smaller agency than we are. I've heard a few other agencies who are facing the fiscal cliff situation that are going into layoffs, so that's a different side of that argument. But for the most part, I do feel that agencies are still looking for folks.
Are we attracting people that are new to being a driver of a bus, or are we attracting people from Fayette County schools?
Most people are new to driving a bus. I can't think of anyone from Fayette County Public Schools off the top of my head. I don't want to say that for certain. But we've gotten folks who have experience in customer service. We do have folks who have experience driving other kinds of vehicles who are coming to us. But yeah, no, I think it's been a really good quality candidates that we've seen. We've been really pleased. I can't say how surprised I am to be able to say that after what we were talking about last year.
It's nice to hear it.
It really is.
Sure.
And so much kudos and thanks to Nikki and the HR staff, Emily and the marketing staff, training and operations. I mean, it's been truly amazing.
So the starting pay is a little better, right?
Yes.
Because of the contract.
Mhm.
But the thing with the scheduling, when they get all the weird
It's still,
shifts, is still
it's
an
still,
issue,
it's
right?
still, it's still in there. Yeah, it's still, we see it, but we're working through it. I think our retention has been much stronger than what it has been in the past. We also have a conversation on overtime. That's starting to come down as well. So all in all, it's just a much healthier place with the number of operators that we have.
So do some operators work like a day shift one day and a night shift the next day, like that? Or is it mostly?
The extra board, you absolutely could work a day shift one day and a night shift the next.
That's hard.
It's hard.
It's harder the other way around.
Yes, and that happens too.
Okay.
We've conducted paratransit community outreach this year. We've had a focus on that, and we will continue to focus on that. One of the big, talking points as we get to our next slide is going to be, how do we realize those paratransit on-time performance improvements that we've all been waiting on? Feeding directly into that are the new vehicles that we put into service, including those 10 paratransit vehicles and 6 fixed route vehicles. We do have more fixed route vehicles on order, and we will talk about that in more detail when we get to the capital plan.
So this page is be what you present to the city council?
This is going to be the start. I'm going to do it the kind of same way I did last year. Is I'll start here with this high level stuff, and then as we discuss, I'll hear back from you and build that full PowerPoint out. We're going to spend most of our time today on the budget.
I understand that
Yeah.
now. I was just going to suggest when you say transit center renovation begins,
Yeah.
to be clear with them what we're doing.
Yeah.
Interior transit center
Interior.
renovation
Yeah.
begins.
Okay, so things we have looking ahead for this upcoming fiscal year is to complete the transit center renovations.
The interior.
The interior transit center renovations, and then really the paratransit on-time performance. We are continuing to work with our ATP Dev. We are getting more corporate support. Randolph is really leading that effort. We have high hopes for the vehicles that we put into service, but we know that vehicles are still an issue.
So when you say corporate support, you're talking about the RATP Dev.
RATP Dev corporate support, yes.
Got it.
We've had different members of the corporate team come in and look at our system to give their recommendations. We had someone from their Indianapolis division that came in. We're working with the CEO and their operations director directly. So we are getting the additional focus on this contract from our ATP dev. I think we're in the moment now we need to see that on-time performance come up. We're looking to complete our strategic plan, and there are 2 civil rights documents that need to be updated this year, which is our DVE program and our Title VI program. Again, those fixed route service improvements, we'll hear more about those later on. That's again schedule adjustments to make sure that our on-time performance stays where we want it to stay. There service to Kearney Ridge. That's an area that has been tricky for us to get to, but we're looking at a way to serve that area.
Where is that?
That is just north of where our service ends on Georgetown Street.
Okay.
We are, again, going to be revenue neutral on our changes, service improvements. Which sort of feeds into the next bullet, community conversations around new service models. So microtransit and the trolley. Again, as we go through the operations budget, it's clear that we don't have a whole lot of room to put out new service. With the way that expenses are increasing, I don't think that it is in our best interest right now to add service. If we were in a position to add service, I think we have fixed route priorities that might come before either of these 2 projects. Should we find external operations dollars that help support these, we're interested. We don't think either of these are a bad idea. With the trolley service, there is some real conversations going on at the city where there might be an opportunity to partner with other community agencies that will provide operations dollars for a trolley. And within this budget, we do have a carbon reduction grant that is available to purchase vehicles. Our position on that, we're happy to do so long as we can use those vehicles in other revenue service when the trolley is not running, and they're ours. I think that is a way that we can help bring the service to life if operations dollars are found and help with our fleet replacement. So
Well, you had the microtransit study before you talked to the city council.
it won't be completely finished, but we do have some.
You'll have a draft.
We have some case study analysis that's been done. We have some of the operations analysis that's been done. We have some rough idea on cost. So we do
So
have
you
some
do right
information.
now have that?
Yes.
What's it look like?
It depends on how aggressive we are. I think anywhere from $500,000–$600,000 a year up to what, Emily, $2.5 million, $3 million, $2.5 to $3 million, depending on how aggressive we would want to put that out. And it just depends on how many zones in the city that we would want to start with. My recommendation would be start small and try to grow it from there. I don't think trying to put it all over the city at once is the right way to do it, but I will leave that to how many dollars can be raised somewhere else to help us support that.
Is there a strategic area around town that would be a good place to start it?
Yes. First of all, think outside of the circle. There are areas identified on the north side of town that would help feed into our fixed route system. One area that sort of surprised us through data analysis was the Clays Mill corridor outside the circle. So I'm running from sort of Palomar all the way back over to Nicholasville because that is a transit desert. That's in the study. I'm not sure that that's where we would want to start because I don't know that the demographics there really fit what the needs we're trying to meet. But we do have maps to show where these different zones are in general and where we can get started. So we're using that as part of our community engagement to say, hey, if funding were available, where should we start? And these are the rough ideas of the zones in the city that we think it might be the most effective. Next on our list is the bus barrier installation project. We are requesting some funding for bus barriers, and that is for protection of operators. We are moving forward. We are installing these at the factory, so at our new builds, they will already come installed. But this is to retrofit some of our existing fleet, and we've got that split over 2 years. because we don't think even if the funding were available that we could do the entire fleet in 1 year.
So is that plexiglass? Or what is it?
It's the kind of material, I'm not certain, and I think it depends on, there's different levels. You saw several different ones at the APTA convention.
Yeah, so it all depends on the cost, but it could be built from the bottom all the way up to the top.
Yeah.
With plexiglass, it could be built with half plexiglass and half sheets of metal. It's just different materials that
Yeah.
depending on the cost. So,
The driver can still see who's on the bus.
yes.
And we're doing this for our driver's safety,
Yes,
given some of the safety concerns.
yes.
We should call it something different than a bus barrier, because when I see bus barrier, I'm thinking of something that's gonna stop a bus from going somewhere.
Yeah, fair point.
Driver barrier.
I will make that edit.
Bus operator security barrier.
Yeah.
Mm.
Something.
Majority of the designs are half built, so from probably
Yeah.
like the waist down and up, you can see.
Yeah.
And it's like the way they open up the door is right here in arm's length, so.
Okay.
I may have missed that. Was that budgeted in last year, or you're saying this is something we're budgeting in this year's budget?
This is something that we have a recommendation in this year's capital
budget.
plan. Yeah. Fleet integration, we have 10 fixed route buses on order currently. That's 4 electrics and 6 CNGs. The electrics are due here in May, and the CNGs are due in December. All right.
Yes, either that or opposite. One's May, one's December.
There is carbon reduction money from a couple of years ago for 1 electric vehicle as well.
And the electric buses are now more reliable than they used to be.
Yes, absolutely. But I do think once these buses are here, that's probably our limit with the
Electric.
infrastructure that we have for electrics. Yeah.
Okay.
Lastly on here, we have complete the Eval project. That is, again, should be wrapping up over the summer, whether it's in the very end of this current fiscal year or the beginning of the next fiscal year remains to be seen. But one good picture of what's coming for customers is
Nice.
that screen that's on the bus. Those will be deployed, they're actually being installed now. So they'll be deployed here in the next few weeks.
Those screens are on all the buses?
They will be, yes.
They will be. And then does that screen look similar to the screens that's going in the transit center?
Yes. The data feeds are the same, and we have the ability to really push different messaging to different routes, to different buses, to different places. So that gives us a whole lot more control on what kinds of content that we can push out.
And that's the Avail project?
All right, I wanted to touch on the capital program document before I turn it over to Nikki to walk us through the budget, and just talk about the intent. This is something new, and I wanted to be able to inform the board on what our priorities for capital projects, and a way for us to talk about the unfunded capital needs that we have. I don't know that we have really discussed that in detail. I know off and on we sort of talk about it, but we've never had it all in one place. And I wanted this to really bring that capital plan to life. The way that we have our line items are mostly FTA driven, and in this document it sort of explains how and why things are put together that way. In the last bullet about support grant writing, it's very helpful when we're writing a grant to be able to tie back to and say, hey, look, this project we've identified as a high priority need. So these are unfunded or partially funded projects. Can you help us out with filling that gap? So the unfunded high priority projects or partially funded projects include the paratransit revenue vehicles. There's a lot of discussion in the document on those. Our fixed route revenue vehicles, and we can talk about when we get to the capital plan, the use of the Section 50 through 39 funds. I mean, this stuff is really complicated. Transportation finance is complicated if you're not in it. And hopefully this document will help the board and others sort of understand how $1 over here is not the same as $1 over there. Also, our transit center exterior renovation, our operator security barriers, and other on-route facilities. So those are partially funded projects. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Nikki to go through our budget.
Can we pause right there?
Absolutely.
These high priority project areas, and then maybe this is kind of coming, these are all things we want to do. We're not recommending in the 2026 budget.
Correct.
We don't have funding or the amount.
This was in the capital program document.
Okay.
Like revenue, paratransit vehicles is a great example.
Mhm.
We are way short of our needs for paratransit vehicles.
Mhm.
And we are recommending using Section 5339 funds for those vehicles with a little support from our local dollars to get us to 10 vehicles.
Okay.
That's falling short. And that's the kind of conversations I think it's really healthy for us to have.
Mhm.
And through this document, I want to sort of bring that
Okay.
up. The other things, there's no money that we're requesting for the fixed route vehicles or the transit center project. But if money were to fall from the sky,
Okay.
this is where we would go back to say, hey, these are our priorities. How do we want to work through that?
And so bus barriers, you're saying we just don't have enough funding for bus barriers?
We split it over 2 years.
Okay.
And we don't think, even if we asked you for the full amount, that we could realistically get the whole fleet done in a year.
Are they going on the routes that are having the most issues? How are you prioritizing which buses are getting the
we-
barriers first?
Prioritize the newer buses because they'll
Okay.
be in service longest. We
Mm.
shuffle buses around
Okay.
different routes, so we don't know which bus is going
That
where.
makes, and there wasn't really a trend on where we were seeing, I think I've heard like so many issues last year. It wasn't like this one route has the
It's
most issues.
across the board.
Do you have like if you had to pick, was one of these a priority over the other, or they're all equally priorities?
I think it depends on how much money we're talking about. Some of the work on the transit center we really do need to do for safety reasons.
Mhm.
Now, can we pull back from the entire thing? Yes. And there's a little bit of information in the document about the way we split that up. Paratransit vehicles, absolute priority. We really need those. But, you know, if we feel like this is a helpful document and helpful exercise, we'll keep it going every year. If you guys say, hey, maybe this is not effective, then we can not do this again. But,
No, I think it's really good what you did,
Mhm.
Fred.
okay, good. That's what I was hoping, that we could bring this conversation, you know, at a high level to life.
I think when you prioritized, it seems to me that anything safety related should be a higher priority than things that are operational related.
Okay.
Which would it moves bus barriers up. And it moves the safety related issues of the transit center exterior up. Now, we have some money, we'll have some money left, right, for the exterior?
I am assuming no.
No,
Um,
I thought there was.
There probably will be, but because I don't know what's coming.
Okay,
There's going to be curveballs that, who knows? If all things go to plan, yes, there'll be some money left over, but
Okay.
I'm just assuming that, worst case, there's not. Now, this doesn't include that through the state grant, that's that $500,000. We're still having trouble activating that.
okay.
At some point, it's been 10 years, do they get to say we're done?
I would think so, but
Because is it federal money that was given to the state?
it is federal dollars, but it is state awarded.
Okay,
it's
so the state actively
rules.
has it.
Yes, it's the state rules. So yeah, I'm open to feedback on this, and if we can just make it a little bit better every time that we update it, I think we'll have a really strong document. Any other questions before we jump over? All right, Nikki, you're up.
Okay, our fiscal year 2026 budget. First column, you'll see the projection that if the last 9 months, are the same as the next few months, this is where we'll end up. There could be, anything that happens in the next 4 months, but this is where we think we'll be. Second column, of course, is the 2025 budget. And then the last column is the draft budget for 2026. We've left our passenger fares flat at this point. Fred can talk more about that if you have any questions about that. Our advertising revenue is on a contract right now. We had $320,000 for this year, and the 2026 number is $335,000. Our property tax revenue, we went with a 3.5% increase. Our projection that we're ending this year is about a 5% increase over last year. The 2024 number was about 5.7%, and 2023 was about 6%. So we've been conservative here and done 3.5% for the property tax. State capital assistance is based on the capital plan and how much that we match our 5307 and 5339 grants. So we're expecting that to be about 1.7. Our federal assistance, this is also from the capital plan where we pull in capital maintenance or preventive maintenance and paratransit assistance. We can use up to 50% of those costs. We don't have enough federal money to use to bring in 50% of those, but we are eligible for that.
So that's a really specific number.
Yes. That is the preventive maintenance and paratransit amount that we think that will be reimbursed. Usually what we do with that is we look at everything in the capital plan that we need. We have, IT projects, we have to spend so much on security. So basically whatever's left over goes into capital maintenance and paratransit.
Are you talking about the state capital assistance number, the $1.7 million number?
I was talking about the federal assistance.
And the state capital is usually most of the grants are matched at 20%. So with the state money, that keeps us from using local money for the state match. We do have a few grants that use.
So that 1.7 is just 20% of the 5.1?
No, because there's some money that the state matches that's not just paratransit and capital maintenance. They also match some 20% of some of our other things, like if we bought computers or things like that. It keeps us from using the local mass transit as a match.
Can the federal, do you hear in your industry that's changing?
We have not heard. We know there's probably going to be changes. We have not heard specifically.
The last continuing resolution to keep the government funded extended business as usual through this federal fiscal year. But beyond that, it's in the bill. Whether or not it moves forward, we don't know.
So this 5.1 gets funded through FY 2026, or is that just to get them through September, their fiscal year? September.
Yep.
Our fiscal year 2026 is actually federal fiscal year 2025. So there has been the money out for this because we run on July through June, they weren't October through September. So their federal fiscal year is always behind a year from what we do. So we pull the 2026 for our budget from the 2025 funds. So right now we're pretty certain of what we're going to get.
Okay. So even though it's funded through September, we will get the money going into our new fiscal year.
Yes, because it's
We'll
a
get
year
the
behind.
formula. But for the next year, they may say, hey, we're messing with the formula. Lexington's getting a smaller percentage because your marriage rates are lower.
Could be.
Yes.
Right, I think those are the discussions on changing based on marriage rate and birth rate.
Yes. Yes. And we expect that when the competitive grant cycle starts, which it should start, usually it's April-ish when it opens, that marriage rates and birth rates will be one of the criteria that the grants are awarded based on.
So you'll get more points based on those numbers of your community?
I mean, that's our expectation. We've not seen the notice of funding published yet, but
Right, although my prediction is comparatively to other urban areas, we're probably higher than other urban areas.
We are.
For both of those.
Okay, our UK partnership agreement. This is a new contract year, so we left it flat for what our budget was this year because we don't know yet what that will be. Miscellaneous revenue, this includes fuel tax refund, vending machine, It also includes the interest income from our money market account. And so we're very pleased with our revenue this year that we feel pretty good about,
Why is
almost
it so much
38
more?
million. Pardon me?
Why is it so much more?
The federal assistance is more, are you talking about miscellaneous revenue? That is the interest for the money market account.
Okay.
Because we put money in January, somewhere around January, so we've been happy with our interest that we've received so far.
Should we round off to the nearest thousand in the budget line?
Want to add $1?
I can add $1.
Well, on all of them,
We can. Yep, we
or
can do
the
that.
nearest 100 maybe.
I'm very specific. Okay, we'll go into the, whoops, didn't mean to do that. We'll go into the operating expenses. Our wages were based on the contract that we did with the union that took effect in 2024. So the wages are budgeted per that contract was 3.5%. Our fringe benefits, we have
Stop for a second.
Uh-huh.
So there's more positions in there too than what we
No.
had before?
We did not add any new positions.
But I think we had less last year because of,
We had some
Labor
vacancies last year
vacancies.
for the operators, so that's why that it's more, we were short operators for half the year.
I think I
Um,
calculated a 7.6% increase.
Well, there's also, they have the progression rate.
Did it, yeah.
There's the progression rate when they come in, and now it takes them 24 months to get to the top rate. It used to take 30 months.
Okay.
So the progression rate is a lot different now for, especially for service workers and utility workers.
Okay, so they'll get more
So-
money faster.
Yes.
Okay.
Our fringe benefits,
But there's no new roles. I know
No,
the
we
last
didn't.
couple budget cycles, we've added new roles.
no, we did not add any new FTEs at all. Fringe benefits, the increase you see there is mostly from health insurance. We do have that being competitively bid right now by our broker, so we should know something around the 1st of May of what that'll be. We feel pretty comfortable with that from what we've talked with them. We've had a couple meetings with them so far, so. Professional services, there's a slight increase in our Transdev contract for management, for the management fees. That's based on our contract. And other professional services, we have the administrative professional services, which might be if we have some outside help doing some things. We have environmental is in there. We also have our audit services, our payroll services, and our contract maintenance for anybody that does work for us as an outside vendor. That's all in professional services. The increase, like I said, what we've seen there, we've seen an increase in environmental, and we've also, of course, have the Transdev increase, and we have raised up some things that we've seen this year, that we've a little bit of towing, we've had pest and dumpster, and we've had some extra dumpster costs because of the construction, things like that. So that's all in professional services, anything that we use an outside vendor for. Materials and supplies, we bumped that up because we are seeing the cost of parts. This is materials and supplies for all departments, but the majority of it is for maintenance. We've seen the parts jump up this year. We're over budget already this year. And what Chris has seen, especially electric bus parts, those have really gone up in price. So we've bumped that up some to take care of that.
We also, Jamie, they originally had higher numbers for both of those fuel accounts, and they put it up into materials and supplies instead, and lowered fuel a little bit.
Okay, diesel fuel, we went with $3 a gallon. It's been running around $2.60. We saw it get up to a little bit higher than that throughout the year, but right now the average is $2.60. Chris has looked at every source that he can find and analyzed over and over more than anybody would ever want to. And what he's seen that is it'll go up a little bit this fall, but then go back down in the spring. So we've done $3 a gallon. We've looked at $2 a gallon for CNG, which is fuel other. We're using more CNG now than we do diesel. So that's you know, a great thing because it's cheaper, but we do think it'll go up a little. It's been running about $1.30. We've budgeted $2. Everything that Chris has seen suggests a slight increase for that. We also increased part of the materials and supplies. We increased the tires. He said the new tires for the electric buses are more expensive than the tires that we've been using, so there is some increase in there for that. Let's see, materials and supplies, fuel, utilities, utilities, phone, electric. The insurance line we had to take up because, as I've said at many board meetings, the property and liability insurance came in a lot more than what we budgeted last year. And so we've bumped that up and used a little bit of an increase that they suggested. Hopefully it's not going to go up as much as it did last year, but we have seen an increase in workers' comp and property and liability insurance.
So our two big buckets are property and liability insurance. So is that like this property and our downtown? What's included in that?
But all the buses, anything that we have as an asset.
Because I've seen
Anything but health insurance.
anything but
Yes, anything but health insurance, right.
And that is also, I think insurance is one of the expected with the tariff increases, just the cost of everything also increases, and so they're expecting insurance costs to go up pretty significantly. Do we feel confident with the 1.2, or do we think it's gonna go up even higher than that?
Right now, we went with the expectation that they had, but it could go higher. We won't know until about June.
Okay. And then the other one was, what was the other insurance? Is workers.
Workers' comp is actually up in fringe benefits,
Okay.
and it's gone up about 5% because of some of the accidents that we had last year. And it had stayed pretty flat for a few years, but it has gone up this year.
So this one, the 1.2 million, is mostly just insurance on our building and buses.
Yes, and we have to insure the paratransit vehicles because we own them, and we have all of our buses, the property here, everything in the property. So yeah.
The
That's a pretty big
non-revenue fleet.
increase, from
Non-revenue,
980
all
to
vehicles.
1.2. But
That's budget.
Yeah, because it increased significantly last year. We had looked at, they told me to do about 5% last year, and it actually went up like 9%. So,
And the electric vehicles are much more.
electric vehicles are much.
We've got more of them now too.
Are those parts from the United States?
I don't know.
So the way that vehicle manufacturing works
Mm.
is the Buy America
Yeah.
is on them, not on us.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Just wondering if those parts got more expensive.
Chris has seen a significant increase, especially electric bus.
Like just in the last couple months?
Fuel taxes, that's of course, we pay the state fuel tax and then we get a refund for about 78% of that. And paratransit expenses, this includes their fuel. We pay for the fuel. We have a contract because we can get a better price, pay for the fuel. It also includes some bus repairs because there are some buses that need significant repairs. It includes the assessments, and it includes the RATP-Dev fees that we pay them. It's $26.38 per trip plus a fixed cost. Randolph has been looking at the ridership, and that number is based on what we think the projected ridership will be. So,
And one thing that this doesn't include is liquidated damages. So we
Is
are
the what?
liquidated damages.
Okay.
So we are going in with the optimistic view that their service would be such that we would not need to charge them any liquidated damages.
Okay, so that's full rate.
Full rate.
yes.
I get it.
Dues and subscriptions, most of that is APTA, about 36,000 of that is APTA. The rest are just ordinary subscriptions that we have. Travel, training, and meetings, we have some training that we need for the trainers to be certified, and we need some training for FTA drug and alcohol. We have some ADA training we need to do. Fred already took his chainsaw to that one and cut it down quite a bit, so we have reduced that from last year. Media advertising, this is what we do all of our, obviously, advertising. This year we spent a lot of money with focus on hiring and job ads. So hopefully Emily's department will be able to get back to some of the other stuff that they've been doing. We will have things like doing business with Lextran. We're gonna we have to do some of those meetings that are required. We're gonna try to do more to that for our DBE, and we also have more PR that we've put in there. And miscellaneous expenses are things like bank fees. We have employee engagement is in there. That's where we have our safety awards. We have our rodeo costs. We have, random gift cards, employee morale type items. And then we have the $2,000 of that is, of course, the lease for the parking spots at the on High Street. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Oh, we're leasing those parking spots from Lex Park?
We lease the ones that have the charging equipment on them.
Yeah.
Oh, that we've always done.
Yeah, and we are leasing the temporary ones too.
We are?
Yeah.
How expensive is that?
It's pretty expensive. It's $5,000 a month.
Per spot
No.
or total? Oh, okay. How many of their spots did we take on High Street for this?
7 or 8.
7, I think. So, any questions?
It's 5,000 for how long?
Per
9
month.
months? A month, but we're doing this for 9 months, right? Or 10?
8 is what we've got.
And the justification for them is lost revenue because they can't charge for those spots for those months. So if I add the increase in wages plus the increase in fringe benefits, that's about a $1.3 million increase between the two of those. Some of that you addressed is for the increase in pay, and then you also addressed the increase in insurance. It's just a large jump. I'm not asking a question, I guess, just more orating. Because we're up 2.5 million from our budget last year, and most of that is wages and fringe. And I think the other one was materials, are like our 3 biggest increases.
Well, we always want to present a balanced budget too.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to present a balanced budget. Anything that we don't spend obviously goes into mass transit. Because we should be under budget in some areas this year because of fuel and some of our little bit in professional services. And then where we've had some vacancies, we'll have a little bit savings in fringe.
Okay. Talked about the insurance. I feel like 3.5 is pretty conservative. We may see even more increase in property tax. I know Dr. Kopp was not here, but he always really looks at that. And then the paratransit, we feel good we've budgeted enough.
Yeah, Randolph and I both looked at that quite a bit, and he analyzes paratransit every day, so I feel comfortable with what he comes up with.
All right, this is just me. When I was looking at this, I would have flipped the first 2 columns, put the projection next to the 2026 budget, because that's what I kept looking at, and I had to skip a column every time.
Okay.
And, the 2025 budget is maybe interesting to look at, but to me, it just seemed like more the projection would probably dictate the next budget.
Okay, so we can flip those
We
for
can do
the
that.
What do
work
you think,
session.
Jamie?
Yeah,
That makes sense. It does.
Mhm.
and that gets us, that's not actuals as of today, that's getting us all the way through the fiscal year.
Yes. I took the actuals through February
Mhm.
and then did the projection through the end of June.
But I will say, I mean, like always, Nikki, you're very close on your projections to budgeted.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Why are we lower on projections for fringe benefits? But then the number for fringe benefit is much more closer to our actual, or sorry,
So-
our budgeted,
Last year, we were given a pretty scary number by our broker.
okay?
And then when the actual bids came back, they came back lower than what the broker had asked us to, advised us to put in the
Is that
budget.
for healthcare?
Yeah,
So that's why we put that 7.2 number last year.
yes.
Were we given another scary number this year, and that's why we were budgeting even more?
It is still scary. It's not as scary as it was last year, but the way health insurance has increased over the past few years, I don't know that there is a non-scary number for health
Right.
insurance.
So that's what, a 700,000 increase
Yeah.
from where we were last year? Almost a 10% increase?
And do you remember the number that we got originally last year? It was 20.
Oh, it was 20, yeah, it was 20.
A 20% increase?
Yeah, it's 20% increase, and we ended up with 9, something like that.
Okay.
This year's gonna be a little bit more than 9, but they are doing competitive bids. We bid it out every year.
How often do you have to change it?
Pardon me?
How often do you have to change the carrier?
We had to change when Humana stopped doing employers. And then we had United Healthcare, I think 2 to 3 years, and then we switched to Anthem. So we currently have Anthem,
There's only two choices, right?
basically, yeah.
It was Anthem, Cigna, and
Anthem, Cigna, and
United.
United Healthcare.
Even ours is going up this year.
I've had a different health insurance carrier every year
Yeah.
that I've worked in career.
Yeah. It's just the way you gotta play.
I think big picture, what makes me nervous, and not nervous this year, it's like everywhere else, it's like, all right, how can you stay the same in your budget or cut your budget? And we're saying we're actually gonna increase 2.5 million because we know that our revenues are gonna increase 2.5 million, so we match that. Where next year, we'll maybe be told like, hey, you're actually gonna need to cut next year because the federal formula changed, or maybe it won't. So it just seems counterintuitive to all the other federal budgets, all the other budgets right now that we're actually increasing. And that's just something that makes me nervous as a finance member, to approve the budget. More just narrative, but
We're very thankful to the taxpayers of Fayette County.
that's true, the property tax. But if next year we're told like, hey, transportation is not a priority, we are gonna cut the federal in half, that's $2 million, $3 million that
It's gonna
we've gotta
be
find.
A very different conversation. Yes.
But we have that money this year,
Yes.
that's a next year conversation? Okay.
And it goes back to the conversation about expanding services. I would love to be able to say, hey, we're in a great place to, get our service to Baptist Health and to add frequency on Versailles Road. I mean, things that we really, in a perfect world, would need to do.
Mm-hmm.
We're simply not in that
Mhm.
environment, and we're not in that position.
And even though we're increasing, all this is, it's an increase just to maintain the services we're currently providing. It's not
Maintaining,
an, yep.
yes, maintaining current services. Any of those service improvements that we're going to talk about, we're going to get as close to revenue neutral as we can get.
Okay.
If not, try to save some money.
I think this chart puts it in a little more perspective when you look at the revenue, with 69% of the revenue coming from property tax. And we are very, very lucky for that, especially through the COVID and everything else, because we saw a lot of properties that had, sales tax or occupational tax. They're in a very different situation than we are. But this, to me, puts it in a little perspective of, how much property tax, how important they are.
And another reason for the capital program document,
Mhm.
if something happened with federal funding, we need to make sure that we're all on the same page of the needs that are in that document. And as we plan how we're going to be moving forward, how are we going to fill our capital needs? It's going to be another conversation that we'd have to have.
Because that's the majority of all that we use for new buses.
Majority, but we're able to offset some of our capital expenses to the federal government through the grant programs.
Okay.
And should that go away, we're still going to have the capital needs.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's another factor that we're going to have to talk about to make sure that we're financially healthy.
If there's a scenario, we've budgeted 3.5 million, we realize, 3.5% revenue increase. It actually comes in next year at 5% revenue increase. We can take that money and start to put it in a balance to offset our capital. We could, I'm just throwing out a scenario,
Yes.
not saying that's a policy,
Sure.
but
Yeah. It gives you an extra year on break. Gives you a year and a half.
I'm going to find a finance member that has all this
No.
institutional knowledge, George.
I hope you stick around.
Yeah, but in 10 years, you
Okay.
Hang in there with us.
I always call Jamie my secret weapon.
And this is our capital plan that we've been working from. Everything on this is what we have money for, or what we think we'll have money for. We don't put any of the unfunded items on this, so this is what we, after 2026, we hope we still have federal money. But we have some purchases on here for our, the current year are the CNGs and the electric buses that Fred mentioned earlier. We've put a real focus on our paratransit vehicles. We still have some of the IT technology services because, as you know, there's new stuff every year. Things are obsolete after 2 or 3 years now, so we
And
keep.
then we have our service agreements.
We have our service agreements to keep up on all of our Vail equipment and everything. The planning, research, and development, that $75,000 is that is the microtransit study for this year. We have a COA projected in there for about 2027. We have non-revenue vehicles. That one's a maintenance truck. Others might be vans or we bought some of the little Ford Escapes for the supervisors to use. We have our paratransit. We have capital maintenance.
And those are the two lines that
Those are
get pushed over to.
That's the revenue you see in the operating budget. And we always have our transit enhancements such as shelters, benches, and trash cans. We budgeted $75,000 for that. And software, hardware, new computers, software, everything like that. Shop tools and equipment, this is miscellaneous equipment. This might be a forklift for maintenance, it's tools for maintenance. Anything that we need repairs on, if we had to, make repairs on the building, this is where that would come from. And the security equipment, you have to have 0.75% of the money, federal money, to use for security. They require you to do that because one of their top priorities is keeping the equipment that they have federal interest in safe. So that's things like cameras, if we had to do a fence repair, if we have signage, anything to do with safety. So then we have our revenue, we have our 5307 formula. We've left that flat with a very small increase for the next couple of years. Our 5339, that is formula funding also. We have the section 5310, which is for seniors and those with disabilities, things that we do above and beyond ADA requirements. We've done the RAMP program with a lot of that money, and of course our state funding, our carbon reduction program that Fred mentioned.
And that carbon reduction line is the trolley vehicles. So that's what, again, if we're able to find operating dollars, that's what that is. If we're not able to find operating dollars and we can't have those vehicles for anything else, then we won't do it.
And is that money sitting with us or with the MPO?
It's the MPO.
That's the.
But they've already obligated it to Lextran if they were to move forward.
Yeah, that's the 480,000, which requires a local match.
And the local match is in the next line, the
Bottom
local
line.
share, the bottom line. So that's where the local match part of it is.
So that's the 480. What was the 750 from this year?
That was also carbon reduction program for
That's the one electric bus that we've not bought
one
yet.
electric bus.
Okay,
Yeah. So we've not spent that. We've not spent those funds yet.
but the 480 MPO has said it's yours for the trolley, but you guys need to pay for the drivers.
No,
Or-
no. So that would be 4 cutaways that we would use for trolleys. We would match that with 120 if some other agency comes up with the operating dollars. If we can collect the operating dollars, we would use it. And again, my position on this was, so long as we can use those vehicles in other revenue service, that's not the trolley.
Okay. Which means you would put them on a route when they're not being used.
Not being used as a trolley, yes.
And who's the agency being discussed to pay operating?
We've talked to Visit Lex. We've talked to Downtown Lexington Corporation. We've talked to some of the businesses in the distillery district. I think a conversation is coming with some of the businesses on the National Avenue block.
Yeah.
Those conversations are being led by the city.
Okay,
But again, same way with the microtransit. I don't want to promise either
right.
on our operating side. But we're a willing partner should someone be able to fund their operations. So like we were talking about before, we're in no position to implement new service.
Mhm.
And if we were in position to implement new service, we have other fixed route priorities that we would need to talk about first.
But if that collection of group came and said, oh, here's $300,000 a year, you guys can operate it,
Yeah.
we would do it.
Yes.
Do we know what that cost would be? Like you have,
Early estimates are about $250 a year, and it depends on schedule. So if we were to go from, like the Thursday Night Live schedule, which is Keeneland to Keeneland, right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday with brunch on Sunday. We've talked about different configurations, and each of those choices drives operations costs. So we would provide to them almost like a menu of services.
right.
And depending on how much funding that becomes available, that's what we would move forward with.
So it sounds like we're talking about the 2 districts that have parking issues. They're trying to find a transit solution for it.
If you don't get the operating money, what changes on this?
Well, if we don't get the operating money, the 480, we likely wouldn't do because it is specifically for those vehicles. Now, if we can have those vehicles for paratransit, I would say, hey, can we think about doing this anyway to get the vehicles for paratransit? But assuming that they can only be used for the trolley, the 480 would go away and the 420 would be reduced to 300. That 300 that's left over is for paratransit vehicles. So that gets, along with our 5339, gets that number up to be able to purchase 10 paratransit vehicles. That's where that's coming from.
Okay. So the fiscal year 2025, that's actually all gonna happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, that's what we've already,
Yeah, that's where we're at right now. Anything that doesn't get finished will roll over to the next year.
Yeah.
I know that the trolley is a little bit confusing, is that?
No, I think that, and then the MPO voted on that, so it's not like we can't say we want to use these for paratransit. It would go back to the MPO and they would say like, no, we're going to go down on our next item, which was Jessamine County's X. And then our COA costs 500, this is just 500,000? That's done?
Yeah, that's a placeholder more than anything else.
I was gonna ask what's involved in the COA, because it seems like I read something, I thought, we don't even need that, but then there's another piece of it. Are there 2 pieces of it?
The COA is a very in-depth operational look, and then usually comes with a fair and equity analysis.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Was fair and equity, because we don't change the fares. So do they have to do that?
They do. The FTA, yeah, looks for that every few years.
Seems-
COA is required by the FDA.
It's not necessarily required. The fair and equity analysis is part of our Title VI program,
Mhm.
and they like to see that part of it every few years. But the COA is good for us to know, where's service doing really well, You know, if we were looking to invest, where should we invest? Where are some places that, you know, maybe we need to move away from? It gives us that kind of information.
And we do it every 5 years?
That's the typical standard, usually 5 to 7. That next year is when it would come up on our calendar. If it's pushed off a year, I don't think that's the end of the world. But again, goes back to the part of like, I want to talk about things that are coming up, not just kind of what's going on this year.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
a big thing in that document, and I sort of this morning is like, maybe I did this incorrectly. The fair collection system, I've got that as a mid-priority project. We might need to be talking about that sooner. But yeah, that's really what I'm trying to do is let's think about not only what's coming next year, but what's coming
Big picture?
big picture. Yeah.
It feels like we just did the COA, but maybe because we're doing strategic planning, we did the microtransit study, we did another study.
We
Oh.
published the COA in '22.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
And we usually use it and talk about it for years based
Yeah.
on what we're doing, so it feels like it's been a lot sooner.
Mhm. The fare collection system, you mean the actual, like, technology we're using to collect the dollar fares?
Yes, the fare boxes.
The actual fare box. And most people, like, buy their passes ahead of time, or, like, they're using the fare box?
I think most people would bypass ahead of time. We do have fare option on board.
This is the onboard system, or
Yes.
just the,
Yeah, yeah, we have a separate point of sale system, but this is the actual, when you walk on the bus, the fare box that you would either tap your card or dip your fare media in. And those were deployed 20-something years ago.
2009, I think.
Yeah, and there's a rough estimate in the document, I think it's like $4 to $5 million. And we're talking about collecting $1 million of fare revenue.
Yeah, it's a lot of dollars.
And, right, is there ways through technology that we can get away from the actual big piece of equipment on every vehicle? Maybe. But it's something that we're gonna really have to wrestle with.
and the t-shirt size cost of that? Like, just ballpark, is that
I
a
think
3 million, a 20 million?
I think I
maybe?
put 4 to 5 in
Is
there.
that what you said, 4 to 5,
Yeah.
okay.
And it interacts in a very interesting way with equity, because the prevailing wisdom is that not everybody has a smartphone. And a smartphone can be used to get away from the actual big piece of equipment. And through our last survey, more people had a smartphone than we thought.
Mhm.
I'm sure that's only grown since then, but those are the...
More people have 55-inch color TVs than you think, too.
Yeah, yeah.
I know, I mean, this was 10 years ago when I worked at the city, that was like 95% of people have access to a smartphone, or just something really high, when I was just thinking about how are you designing for the anomalies, or are you designing for the majority?
Right.
But I'm sure that's changed even. Okay. Anything else big picture you want to talk about, Fred? Like years 2027, 2028?
No, I think the focus on paratransit vehicles really has to be top of mind, because the deficit was so big when, in 2022. The 10 vehicles that we have requested in here, that needs to be more of our regular cycle purchase, once we get to full fleet. I think the fare collection system is going to be really important coming soon. Our fixed route revenue vehicles fleet, I think we're in a pretty decent shape. I mean, much better than what we were. But that's one of those, if you take your eye off the ball a little bit, it's really, really easy to get behind on.
Yeah, Fred said when we get these 10 new ones, our average age is going to be 6 point something.
Yeah, yeah,
Which
and
used to be
it's like, there's no money in here, but we're still taking possession of vehicles this year. So it's not this year, it's gonna be next year when there's no vehicles coming in. That's when kind of the gap starts. And again, we're basing this on 12-year useful life.
Okay.
We have vehicles that are 18 years old, and they're okay. the maintenance costs are higher and so on and so forth. But the goal of 5 to 6 vehicles is based on that 12-year useful life. That is our gold standard.
What do you get surplus wise when you give up a bus? Nothing?
Not much. Not much at all. Do you not have?
We've had them sold, they're usually, you know, more than 12 years old, more than 500,000 miles. We've gotten, probably the highest we've ever gotten from a bus is like, you know, $1,300–1,400. You don't get much.
Yeah.
It's very little. There's such a limited market.
Yeah.
You know, we've had some of the cutaways and some of the buses also, they've turned into, you know, like the party bus or things like that. But yeah, it's very, very low.
And since we bought it with federal money, that money has to go to then buying another bus?
If it's past its useful life and there's not any value, federal interest left, then we don't have to.
And that's that 12-year.
Okay, and then, but all of these are past their useful life, so it's
Yes.
not.
Another interesting thing is I think that market is going to be oversaturated because of the agencies who are cutting service.
Because of what?
Agencies that are cutting service.
Oh.
So there's going to be lots of those old vehicles floating around.
How many transit agencies do you think are going to be cutting services going into this next year?
Some of the big ones. SEPTA, I think, was in the news in the last couple of days.
Where are they?
Philadelphia. And then TARC, of course. I think we've heard Chicago is another big one. So I think some of
Are they doing it mostly by cutting routes or making them longer in between routes?
both. Some of the coverage routes, for the SEPTA plan, I saw the coverage routes are essentially gone. And then some of the frequencies are going to be dialed back. Some of the trains are going to be less frequent. They were pretty significant cuts.
One thing I noticed, I think,
Oh, sorry.
we only did this year, did we budget less for the shelters, benches, and trashes? Or that's just we're going to spend, we didn't spend our full
We
amount?
budgeted
We did
less.
budgeted less, yes.
Remind me why? Just, we couldn't get to all of them?
No, we've had such a good run with the additional money that we were doing 150 a year,
Yeah.
and we backed that off to 50, and we're kind of splitting the difference here with 75. And I did get George's comment. We're going to have a discussion on what we've done so far. That's going to come next week. So that'll put that in a little more context.
There was a time too, Jamie, when I think I asked Fred this a while back, and he did like the boardings and, what do you call them?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody gets off?
Allottings.
Like
What?
in,
Allottings.
No, anyway,
yeah, that presentation was like,
it's like 5.
Yeah.
All day or
Our
something.
our threshold was initially 25 boardings for a shelter, and we've gotten that down to 8, 9, 10, something like that. Yeah. But it's hard to talk about because it's not always true, because there's some stops that have really high ridership, but the context around it doesn't fit a shelter. Richmond
Yeah.
Road's a great example of that. You
Which
got
one? Oh.
Richmond Road.
Yeah.
There's drainage issues and grade issues, and putting a shelter in there would be really expensive.
Yeah.
But as a general rule of thumb, yeah, we're down 10 or less for a shelter now. And we do have some replacements that I think we're looking at and working on. So,
what's the Lextran facilities maintenance as a high priority? Is that this building?
yeah, and so this is one I wrestled with myself on, because it's typical maintenance.
Okay.
And it's facilities upkeep. And as I was putting this document together, I wanted to figure out how to say, okay, this is how much it just costs to keep everything up to standard.
Mm-hmm.
And same way with technology. You had the question about the technology. Is the same principle.
Yeah.
There's some smaller annual cost for upkeep, and then at the end, there's usually a big one, right? That's technology-wise is redoing our networking infrastructure, which we've done a lot of that, so it's not an issue now. 6 years from now, we might be saying, hey, we need to do a revamp. But for the facility, I mean, maybe the roof is a good example. At some point, the roof needs to be
The
replaced.
roof is going to be really expensive.
Yeah.
We need to put money back so that we have it,
And that's what I wanted.
because that's not gonna come out of a grant, is it?
Very unlikely.
Yeah, we could, part of it, but we probably wouldn't have enough grant money to do it. We have bumped up the shop tools, equipment, facilities a little bit for those kind of repairs. But we probably wouldn't have enough to cover it in grant money.
But I think this is one of those places where this document could be improved, is to bring more specific information on those kinds of things.
And then, I may have missed this, the canopy project came in way over budget, and we have, it was like $2 million in federal money around that. What are we gonna do with that?
We're working with the FTA to see if we can do the site work and prepare the lot in case that money becomes available in the future.
Is that the only thing we can do? Because it feels odd to like prep a site that may never happen.
I would rather use it for other things, but I'm not sure how much wiggle room we'll get from the FTA to do other things. Like, a bunch of paratransit vehicles sure would sound good to me, or the
Yeah.
transit center work that we need to do, that would really be
But that
helpful.
came out
It
of,
seems like you could sell it that way.
It's a low or no emissions grant, and
Okay.
they're very
Oh.
particular, and they don't let you make changes.
yeah, and we competitively want it, so it's like, we've got to stay within our scope,
Yeah.
somewhat within our scope.
And they send you to prison if you don't.
They're getting really tight on what's in your federal grant scope these days.
Yes.
So,
I don't want to go to jail either.
No, no, thank you.
I wonder if you could, I don't know, if it's a low-no grant or whatever it's called, if they would shift it to buses.
Buses. With that, with the electrics,
We don't want more electrics.
yeah, we're kind of hitting our capacity without doing,
What about electrics for paratransit? They don't have any,
They don't have electric
Maybe.
cutaways.
they don't have any, oh, they don't exist?
I think they exist, maybe?
I think I know they don't have hybrid ones because we put hybrid in something and there are no hybrid cutaways.
Huh.
But the cost of, I'm not sure about electric. Yeah.
Yeah.
More sort of pseudo and not, and significantly more expensive because of the post-production changes that have been made to the
You seen any?
vehicle and the needs. They don't have the infrastructure needs for that type of fueling. They would have to support us, so, or we would have to support them, so then we still have infrastructure needs to be able to support those services.
And the useful life of a cutaway is 5 years, 150,000 miles. So that would be a gigantic expense for,
And pushing harder on our electric vehicle fleet would mean more investment in the infrastructure out here, which was part of the
What
canopy.
about a low-no if you could convert it to CNG?
If I could do that, we'd be in business. I would definitely do that.
It's worth asking.
It's worth
I mean,
asking.
All they can do is say no.
Worth asking.
And just tell them that, here's the other option. We'll prepare a pad for something that may never happen, which is,
Not very
it's kind of wasteful.
useful.
All right, I want to go back to the facility here. And long-term capital needs. And the big thing is roof, parking lot, and HVAC, probably. And trying to get an estimate of when those expenses would have to happen and how much it's going to be.
Okay.
And then see where we are, see how much money we need to put back every year to have the money when the time comes.
Okay. I'll do that.
Because you don't want it to come up, you gotta, I don't know how much this roof would cost, it'll be a lot.
It'll be a lot.
But you have a several $1 million expenditure and you don't have any money for it yet.
I'll see if I can get that figured out by Wednesday.
So you kinda do it just a long-term capital plan.
Yeah.
But, we did that at Lexington Catholic High School, and then we started charging a part of the student fee went to that. And so we had that pool of money, so, you replace the turf field, you replace the roof, you replace, this and that, and you had it kind of laid out that you needed the money.
Okay.
and don't forget, we have about 5.7 million in the reserve funds.
Yeah,
So we could,
so that's, well, that's part of it.
yeah.
So we just need to see how much that covers.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll see if I can work that in. I think that's a perfect
Yeah.
use for this document, so I can get that in there.
So can we, I guess the other thing that's not, oh wait, sorry, did you finish?
Yes.
It's like at some time, we're gonna have to put a bow on the transit center exterior renovation, if that's a priority for us. Because what I'm hearing you say is like, we have to do, we wanna do components of it, but to do like everything in our original plan, it's gonna be a couple extra million.
Yeah.
That we don't have, unless property tax comes in and which it may, because we've only budgeted 3.5%.
I asked Fred about this.
You did?
Yeah, I said, should it be a high priority since the board decided it wasn't?
Mm.
And, I mean, some of it is, so maybe you can split it up
Split it up a little bit.
into safety issues being a high priority, and the rest of it being,
On page 8,
Do you have it by,
well, it's not split to I think the detail that we need to split it to, but it is split a little bit, but I can maybe drill that down even a little bit more. So site work, ceiling cleaning, painting, lighting, power and IT systems. That doesn't get us, I think, George, where we're trying to go, but I can take another pass at that and see if we can.
say
Hold
that
on a
again, you're saying like these costs are just like the basic. What were
that's
you-
the 2.2 million.
That's the 2.2.
Oh, okay.
And so that was based on an estimate that Kirsty and Kersey provided.
Mhm.
They said that they had bumped it up quite a bit, and I bumped it up quite a bit again.
Okay.
Just to, I don't want to replay that, the interior over again, so I want to try to overestimate.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't think this quite gets to the level of detail that you're looking for. I think that's what I'm hearing, and I can take another pass to
Well,
see.
what falls into building site work?
That would be those safety improvements.
Okay.
Mm.
That would be the truncated dome. And then I think the ceiling cleaning, painting, and lighting would be the column work. The power and IT systems, that's the big structural piece in the middle that we were going to use for the screens.
So maybe that ends up being low priority, that part of it. Maybe you do building site work is high and the next one is mid and the other one's low. And then that way, if there's money. And that building site work, I don't know. If everything went to plan, there's some contingency in the budget, isn't there, for the interior?
Yes.
All right, so if you come out of it on budget,
Budget.
how much is left over for the outside?
It would be a few $100,000. It wouldn't be,
Plus our $500,000 grant.
if you had $500,000 grant in there, yeah.
Now, does the $500,000 grant have to be for something specific?
Yes.
Signage, right?
It was cleaning, painting, lighting, and the truncated domes. So with
this
the truncated
middle one.
domes, we could probably make it work. But the issue that we keep running into is how do we access that money? Because the state still hadn't approved the exterior package that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And we've backed off since we moved forward with the interior, but
Well, if you ended up, if there's a way to get it, and then, if we have another 100 or 200,000, you can do a lot of those first two things,
okay.
right?
I think so. We would get back to the issue of finding the contractor. That was another one that was a concern.
We just
Because
have to bid it.
they have to be pre-qualified by Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and they're looking for projects that are multi-million-dollar highway construction projects. But it's absolutely worth trying. And I think, I'll take another pass at this and try to reconfigure that. And I think maybe I can even put a flag on these issues that have safety components related to them to make them kind of pop out and stand out a little bit more.
I wonder too if you could get a state legislator to kind of carry the water and just say, this one requirement is making it, we don't have a pool of potential bidders because of this one requirement. And we're talking about painting and, replacing some lights or whatever. It really doesn't have to meet that So is there anything you can do to help us? And just see, maybe they can, maybe they can't.
Okay. Yeah, I think mine was just like making sure we're still discussing it. I didn't mean like put to bed as in stopping it, because I was the vote yes to,
Yeah.
I'd like the exterior project. But I guess just making a decision at some point when we're gonna fund it.
Yeah. Especially with the, like the safety improvements in the truncated domes, it would be wonderful if we could do it while the facility was shut down over the summer.
I don't know what a truncated dome is.
That's
Well, they're
those
gonna wrap the bottom
tiles-
of that.
Yeah,
Oh, wait. Okay.
like little bubbles that you see on curbs, and that's a tactile warning for someone with visual impairments that a
Okay.
change in usually grade is
Why did they
near.
call it that? So nobody would know what it was.
Probably.
There's like yellow pads. Is that what you're, or no?
Yeah.
They can be yellow, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes they're yellow or orange, or just like little bubbles is what
Yeah,
they look like.
okay, I know exactly what you're saying.
I know there was a law, if you're paving the road and it doesn't have the yellow pad bubbles, you have to put the yellow pad in the sidewalk. Okay. We don't do a formal vote, right, to move this on to the
Um,
discussion the next week? I think it's
It's, as long as you're recommending me to move forward,
no changes.
You put a lot of work into it. And I appreciate it, I'm sure Jamie appreciates
and
it.
Mhm.
it wasn't just me,
Well,
it was Nikki,
the
it was
collective team.
Emily, it
Mhm.
was,
thank you, everyone.
yeah, it was,
I'm going back to my, so the micro transit, when will we get to see that study?
May is what we're targeting,
April, May?
and we can, if you have any specific questions, we've got a lot of information
Okay.
already.
And that's like when they're completely done with it, that's the handoff? Or
Draft.
after May, can we still like ask them
Can we
anything?
keep it in draft form so we don't have to?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I think it'll be in draft form when we talk about it in May, so if there's any additional questions or that sort of thing,
If it's in draft, can we go into closed session?
I mean, I'm sure we can go to closed session just to talk about it.
Probably. I don't see why not.
And if it's draft forever, do we ever have to release it?
That I don't know. I think you'll have some
I think we'll
people
have-
barking at your door if you don't release it.
and it's, they've done a really nice job of sort of breaking down, these are case studies, and this is what we learned from each case study, and these are the recommendations based on the case studies. Here is the data that we have collected that pertains directly to Fayette County, and these are recommendations based on that data. So it is not a hard and fast, this is what you should be doing, this is what you must be doing. It is, here is what we know, here is what we know based on your information, here is what we know from the engagement, and based on the lessons learned by other agencies and by, industry knowledge, data, the combination of those things, these are the recommendations of how you should move forward, big picture. But there's not like, you should have microtransit on this corridor of this street with this frequency and that sort of thing. That still is up to staff recommendations and the board and all of that to make those final decisions. It is still a large picture, but the picture is not it's less nebulous than it has been in the past. So.
I think our position's the same. It's not a bad idea,
Mhm.
and there's really a possibility to bring value to the community if we were to try it out. But as we've gone through today, it's clear we cannot assume the operations cost for this thing.
And remind me, we ended up paying for the full study, because there was a time where we were saying, this is not our priority, the city's asking us, the city should pay for it, but we picked up the full
We
cost
did.
of the study. And so we will go back and present it, here's the results.
Who do we
What,
present it to?
not, I think, it went to a committee,
Well,
environmental quality
yes,
committee.
we're
or-
gonna update the committee. I will be in front of Environmental Quality Public Works the day before the April meeting, so I think it's the 22nd.
About
and
this study, or about,
Just about Lextran in general.
Okay.
I mean, I'll touch on this study,
Mhm.
and then our city council presentation is May the 6th,
so March, April, so you will have this,
3 o'clock.
you will have this study by then.
I mean, we'll have again,
Yeah.
for the information that we have
The
now,
draft.
we won't have a full study.
Okay, so it sounds like March, April, you said we would see it in April, May.
It's in May.
Okay. And then last year, I thought we had some marketing money in our budget. Did we not end up using it? Like we had,
We use it a lot for the transit center.
Okay.
We're working on the marketing and PR RFP.
okay,
That should come out a few weeks, I think, a couple months, not a few weeks, longer than that.
We have operations on High Street for more than a week first.
Coming soon.
but I think we had discussed in last year's budget, we had some money for like a marketing and PR. Is that in this budget or no, we're just gonna
Yes.
use, that's also in this budget, okay.
Yes.
In that, trying to make sure I got all my questions from earlier when you were presenting. I think so. Thank you.
Thank you. George, thank you.
You have a final word.
We done? We can adjourn. Thank you, everyone. He's gonna show me something.